In January 2014, the Parker family left Sydney on a routine holiday drive. Weather clear, tank full, luggage packed neatly in the trunk. At 6 p.m., their sedan was discovered idling on a rural road outside Dubbo. Engine running, doors locked, headlights cutting through the dusk. Inside, a folded road map, half open, one corner torn. But the family was gone. Police searched the surrounding bushland, chalked it up to voluntary disappearance. Years passed. Birthdays and anniversaries were marked by empty chairs. Then, a private lab found fibers in the vehicle inconsistent with any Parker clothing. A small anomaly, ignored in official reports, would ignite a relentless family-led investigation. Decades of silence cracked open when a sealed evidence bag was pulled from storage. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from today. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. The Parker family left their Sydney home on a Friday morning in January 2014. It was the last week of school holidays, a time when highways filled with families escaping the city heat. Neighbors watched them pack the silver Holden Commodore with ordinary precision. David Parker, 39, loaded 2 hard-shell suitcases into the trunk. Anna, his wife, placed a cooler box beside them, its lid secured with duct tape. Lucas, 10, carried a backpack with his name stitched on the strap. Sarah, 8, clutched a stuffed koala until Anna insisted it belong in the back seat. Departure was logged indirectly. At 10 a.m., traffic cameras captured the Commodore merging onto the Great Western Highway. The car registered like any other. License plate 1CN7QH, metallic reflection against the asphalt. No infraction, no deviation. The image was filed later under last confirmed sighting, urban corridor. By 2:15 p.m., the vehicle stopped at a fuel station outside Bathurst. The receipt, recovered from David's wallet when it was later logged, showed 37 liters of unleaded, pump 3, paid in cash. Transaction ID 57124. The attendant, questioned days later, recalled only that the man wore a navy t-shirt and appeared calm. This receipt became Exhibit 2 in the official record. From Bathurst, the road carried them northwest toward Dubbo. Weather reports documented 31 degrees Celsius, light winds, visibility clear. Nothing unusual was reported along the route. At 6 p.m., a farmer driving home along the Mitchell Highway noticed headlights on the gravel shoulder. The car sat idling, angled slightly toward the scrub. He assumed the driver had pulled over for rest. At 6:34 p.m., a patrol vehicle arrived after another motorist reported the stationary car. Constable Daniel Rowe recorded the time in his duty log. He approached expecting to find an occupant asleep. Instead, he saw 4 locked doors and an empty cabin. The engine vibrated softly. The headlights remained on. The ignition key was still inserted. He circled the car, noting no broken windows, no damage to the exterior. He shined his torch into the interior. 2 children's toys lay neatly in the rear footwell. A plastic dinosaur, a stuffed koala. On the front passenger seat lay a road map, unfolded halfway, one corner torn diagonally. Photographs were taken between 6:45 p.m. and 7:03 p.m. Image set 14:27 captured the torn map, the steering wheel, the fuel gauge at 3/4, and the odometer frozen at 214,086 kilometers. The dashboard clock read 6:04 p.m. The trunk was opened. Inside, investigators found the cooler box still cold. Yogurt cups intact, sandwiches wrapped in foil untouched. No blood, no signs of leakage. At 7:15 p.m., the car was towed under sodium lights. The tow log was signed by Rowe, documenting location, odometer, and condition. Chain of custody commenced. Evidence bags were prepared. #01 ignition key, #02 torn road map, #03 cooler box, #04 children's toys. That night, canvassing officers spoke with residents within a 5-kilometer radius. One recalled seeing headlights near dusk. None reported screams, gunshots, or another vehicle stopped nearby. No security cameras overlooked the stretch of road. By midnight, the Holden sat under fluorescent light in Dubbo's impound bay. A plastic sheet covered the roof. Evidence bags lined a steel rack. The preliminary incident report, typed at 1:45 a.m., classified the disappearance as voluntary absence. It cited absence of forced entry, absence of physical struggle, and lack of forensic anomalies. The Parker family's relatives received only a brief call. The car was found intact, the occupants not located. Linda Parker, David's sister, drove 6 hours through the night from Sydney. When she arrived at Dubbo station, she was told the vehicle was sealed, not to be disturbed. "What did you find inside?" she asked. An officer hesitated, then answered, "A map on the seat, that's it." The map would remain in her mind. Folded, torn, sealed in plastic. An ordinary object, but the last thing left in reach. No footprints were documented on the gravel shoulder. No tire impressions beyond the Holden's own. No CCTV frame ever showed the family walking away. The investigation began not with violence, not with evidence of assault, but with a machine left humming in the dusk, ownerless. The map lay open, one corner torn. The Holden Commodore remained in Dubbo's impound yard through the last days of January 2014. It was parked beneath fluorescent light, cordoned off with yellow tape, its surface filmed with dust. A transparent plastic sheet covered the roof, edges sealed with tape. Inside, the air thickened with heat trapped since the tow. Forensic officers entered the bay on January 25th. They wore disposable coveralls and latex gloves, their movements recorded by a fixed camera in the corner. Each item was logged before removal. Evidence bag number 01 contained the ignition key, photographed in place before extraction. Evidence bag number 02 enclosed the torn map. Under ultraviolet light, the paper showed faint smudges where hands had pressed into creases. Fingerprint powder clung in black specks, yet no ridgelines could be recovered. The document was resealed and placed into cabinet drawer 7C. Bag number 03 contained the cooler box. Its contents were catalogued. 4 sealed yogurt cups, 3 sandwiches in foil, 1 apple. All were disposed of within a week, marked perishables destroyed. Bag number 04 held the children's toys, a stuffed koala and a green plastic dinosaur. Both were returned to the extended family in Sydney by February 2nd. The odometer reading, 214,086 kilometers, was entered into the report. The fuel gauge had registered 3/4. Mechanics confirmed the car's systems were normal. No tampering with ignition, no cut wires, no fluid leaks. The official report dated January 27th repeated a phrase that would shape the entire case. At present, no evidence suggests criminal interference. That line appeared in bold in the first paragraph. Paragraph 3 added, "Occupants may have left voluntarily, destination unknown." The classification used was voluntary absence. Linda Parker, reviewing the report days later at her kitchen table in Sydney, underlined those words in red. Voluntary. She knew her brother's routines. Mortgage payments current, school fees due, medical prescriptions recently filled. Nothing pointed to a deliberate disappearance. Linda returned to Dubbo in early February. She requested access to the vehicle. Permission was denied. The Commodore was due for release to insurance, its evidentiary value considered negligible. She wrote letters. On February 2nd, she filed a Freedom of Information request for the interior photographs. On February 14th, she received a 1-page denial. Disclosure would compromise ongoing investigative process. By then, the file was already inactive. In March, the car was released. Insurance processed it as abandoned property. Groceries had been discarded. Only the torn map remained sealed in storage, referenced as A219. It became the single object preserved in the chain of custody system. Linda's frustration hardened into method. She purchased a binder. On its spine, she wrote, "Parker requests." Inside, she logged every attempt. Phone calls unanswered, letters returned, denials citing lack of grounds. Each entry bore a date and time. The photograph of the map on the seat became her anchor. She pinned a photocopy to her kitchen wall. With a red marker, she traced the route from Sydney to Dubbo, circling the location where the car was found. She added notes in the margins. Groceries intact, odometer consistent, why torn? By April, her kitchen resembled an operations room. Strings of colored thread marked highways, fuel stops, time windows. She cut clippings from newspapers, highlighting discrepancies in statements. To investigators, the torn map was a minor curiosity. To Linda, it was the starting point of every unanswered question. When relatives visited, they found her standing before the wall, silent, studying the photocopy. To them it seemed obsession. To her, it was the only path forward. Fingerprint dust clung to the folded paper creases. The search operation began on January 26th, the morning after the car was impounded. Local police coordinated with state emergency service volunteers. A helicopter was deployed at 9:10 a.m., lifting from Dubbo airfield. Its flight path traced a 5-kilometer radius around the Mitchell Highway. Thermal imaging cameras scanned bushland for heat signatures. None were recorded. Ground teams moved in grids. The official log showed 46 volunteers walking lines through dry grass and scrub. Each grid was numbered, each sector checked, then marked clear. Dogs were deployed at 11 a.m. Handlers logged scent detection attempts using family clothing provided by Linda. The dogs pulled toward the highway shoulder, then lost the trail 20 meters into scrub. The log noted, "Scent dissipated. No continuation." By dusk, the operation was scaled down. No clothing, no bodies, no discarded belongings were found. The search coordinator's report summarized the day as no positive indications. Linda studied the logs later. One entry caught her attention. At 7:45 a.m., a volunteer had photographed a boot print near a creek bed, 2 kilometers south of the vehicle. The photograph was attached to the file but marked inconclusive. The size appeared smaller than an adult male. The impression seemed deeper on one side, as if weight had been carried. Linda asked about it during a debrief. The officer replied, "Could be a hiker. Could be weeks old. Not relevant." The boot print was not cast in plaster, not preserved. It remained only as a low-resolution image. This omission began to shape Linda's conviction that official channels would not solve the case. She photocopied the boot print photograph and pinned it beside the road map on her kitchen wall. Red string connected them. She wrote beneath, "Child, burdened." Media coverage dwindled. Local papers ran 2 stories in January, 1 in February, then silence. The Parker disappearance slipped from headlines, eclipsed by other events. By March, the police file thinned. The final note, dated March 3rd, read, "Search concluded. No further leads." The case was archived. Linda refused to let it close. She returned to the creek bed on her own, armed with a handheld GPS and the photocopied grid map. She walked sector by sector, mirroring the official logs. She found nothing. No clothing fragments, no metal, no plastic. But she documented her walk in a notebook, recording time, coordinates, and weather. Her entries read like forensic logs. 1340 sector clear, no disturbance. Each night she compared her notes with the police logs. She circled discrepancies. Times unrecorded, distances miscalculated, volunteers rotated without notation. These details fed her belief that the investigation had been careless. Her wall grew denser. The map at the center, the boot print photograph beneath it, strings radiating outward like veins. Visitors noticed the transformation of her kitchen. To Linda, it was no longer a home, but a workspace, a place to hold pressure against silence. The police moved on, but the family had begun their own inquiry. One footprint pressed deeper, as if carrying weight. The police declared the file inactive by April 2014. The word used was suspended. Resources, they argued, had to be diverted to active crimes. For Linda Parker, it meant every official door closed. She began writing letters. The first, dated April 12th, was addressed to the Dubbo station commander. She requested access to the full search file, including maps, logs, and photographs. The reply came 2 weeks later. Denied. Disclosure would compromise investigative integrity. She tried again, this time citing the Freedom of Information Act. The request was routed to the state office in Sydney. Months passed before she received a thick envelope. Inside were photocopies of field notes, each page streaked with black bars of redaction. Paragraphs were missing. Coordinates were obscured. Even names of volunteers were withheld. Linda spread the papers across her dining table. What should have been a narrative of the search was instead a landscape of gaps. She began transcribing, line by line, into a ledger of her own. Each missing passage was marked with a black rectangle. One note caught her attention. Dated January 26th, timed 11:15 a.m., it described possible disturbance in scrub. The following 3 lines were censored. To Linda, this omission was intolerable. She circled it, wrote, "What disturbance?" in the margin, and pinned the copy onto her wall beside the map. Her wall grew into a board. The torn road map remained at the center. Around it, she pinned FOIA letters, censored reports, and photocopied bootprint images. Red thread linked them in arcs and diagonals. Each morning she stood before it, coffee cooling in her hand, eyes fixed on the black bars. Relatives worried. They asked if she was sleeping. She deflected, showing them pages of logs, insisting the case was solvable. By September, she had sent 6 more letters. She requested access to the original evidence bags. She argued for independent review. Each denial was logged into her binder. She numbered them in sequence. Denial number 1 through denial number 7. The 7th denial, dated September 3rd, contained a phrase that hardened her resolve. "This matter is not under active investigation." For Linda, it was not only a bureaucratic line, it was abandonment. She photocopied the phrase and taped it directly over the road map, a black rectangle across the paper highway. In October, she sought help from a lawyer. They filed a formal appeal. The process dragged. Meetings were postponed. Responses were delayed. Nothing tangible emerged. At night, Linda studied the censored documents by lamplight. She traced over the black bars with pen, writing guesses in the margins. Footprint? Fiber? Witness? Each absence seemed to point toward presence. Each redaction deepened her suspicion that something had been overlooked or concealed. The torn road map, pinned and circled, became the one constant. An ordinary object transformed into obsession, its blank creases reflecting all the questions unanswered. Black ink covered 3 crucial lines of text. Winter of 2015 brought a new phase. Linda Parker, no longer trusting police labs, turned to a private facility in Sydney. She sent inquiries by email, asking if any accredited laboratory would re-examine physical evidence from a closed file. Most refused. One accepted, under strict conditions, requiring formal release paperwork. Obtaining the evidence was impossible through official channels. Every request had been denied. So Linda turned to another route. She contacted a retired forensic technician, someone she had met during a community meeting. He told her bluntly, "If you want answers, you'll need to fight for access. But once you have a sample, even a trace, the science will speak." Months later, through legal appeal, she received one concession: access to a fiber sample taken from the Commodore's front seat. The sample, a short blue strand, had been cataloged but never matched to family clothing. It was mailed in a sealed tube, labeled Specimen C, D447 Scene 14. The private lab's report arrived 6 weeks after submission. It was clinical, detached. Fiber composition inconsistent with clothing items recovered from Parker residence. Polyester cotton blend. Manufacturer origin unknown. Linda read the sentence 3 times. A foreign fiber, present in the car, not belonging to her brother, his wife, or the children. She photocopied the report, highlighted the line, and pinned it beneath the road map. Red string connected the fiber to the torn corner. Forensic clarity hardened her case. What police had dismissed as voluntary absence now had an anomaly. Material trace, unexplained, ignored in the original file. She shared the result with local media. A small newspaper printed a headline: "Private test raises questions in Parker case." The article ran on page 6, but its effect spread further than expected. Callers began phoning her number, leaving fragments of memory. One man said he had seen the Commodore pulled over weeks earlier. Another claimed a black pickup was parked near the bridge that same night. Linda wrote each account into her ledger. She logged names, times, phone numbers. She taped the clippings onto her board. At night, she stared at the fiber tube on her desk. To her, it was no longer a fragment of thread. It was intrusion, physical proof that someone else had been inside the car. The private lab's chain of custody receipt was added to her binder. Date: August 14, 2015. Analyst: R. Singh. Result: inconclusive origin, inconsistent with family clothing. Linda read it aloud in her kitchen, as if reciting evidence in court. The walls around her were papered with copies, strings, photographs. What began as grief had transformed into method. And still, the torn map remained at the center, pointing to nothing, absorbing everything. The fiber strand glowed pale under ultraviolet light. By 2016, the case had shifted from silence into faint noise. The article about the fiber test continued to circulate online, reposted in forums and community pages. One call stood out from the others. A man phoned late one evening, voice low, uncertain. He said he had been driving a livestock truck over the Macquarie River Bridge the night the Parker car was found. He remembered headlights parked awkwardly near the bridge and another vehicle close by, a black pickup. Linda wrote the statement in her ledger. She marked the date, time, and words. Black pickup, bridge. She asked the man to describe more. He hesitated, then said, "I didn't stop. I kept driving, but I remember taillights, 2 sets." The call was logged into her growing file. She printed a photocopy of the bridge map, circled the location, and pinned it beside the torn road map on her wall. A new red string connected them. Linda contacted the newspaper again. They published a short piece. Witness recalls second vehicle at Parker's scene. The article carried little weight in mainstream news, but it stirred conversation locally. People speculated about what the pickup was doing there, why it had never been mentioned in the official record. Linda submitted the tip formally to police. The response arrived 3 weeks later, a typed letter stating, "No further action warranted. Witness statements inconclusive." She filed the letter under denial number 12. The pickup remained a phantom, visible only in her notes and on her board. She pursued other avenues. She contacted volunteers who had taken part in the original search. Most had little to add. One, however, remembered an unusual patch of scorched ground found weeks after the search ended. It was dismissed at the time as controlled burn residue. Linda returned to the site in March with 2 community volunteers. They used a consumer-grade drone to survey the scrub. From overhead, the camera captured a darkened circle in the soil, irregular in shape. The images were printed and compared to bushfire maps. No official burn had been registered in that sector. Soil samples were taken and mailed to the same private lab. The results arrived in May. Positive trace of petroleum-based accelerant. This was no controlled burn. It was fire set deliberately. Linda updated her board. A new photograph pinned beneath the road map. A drone shot of the blackened ground. Date stamped. A note in red marker. Accelerant. The pickup, the scorch mark, the fiber, all pointed outward from the same center. Still, the official position did not move. Police cited lack of direct connection, absence of bodies, absence of identifiable suspects. For them, anomalies remained insufficient. For Linda, they were evidence. She spent evenings arranging and rearranging her board, lines converging on the torn map, threads crisscrossing like arteries. The witness, the pickup, the accelerant, none yet admissible, all fragile. But they were cracks in silence. The witness circled the bridge on a photocopied map. The drone discovery altered momentum. For months, Linda Parker pressed media outlets with the soil analysis report. Larger newspapers declined coverage, calling it inconclusive. But regional radio picked up the story. On air, Linda described the burned patch of earth, accelerant confirmed, yet ignored by police. Callers began to flood the station. Some offered sympathy, others fragments of memory. One call came from a retired bushfire warden. He said no official burns were conducted in that corridor in early 2014. He remembered being puzzled at a scorched clearing when he drove past in February, assuming it was an illegal campfire. His recollection matched Linda's drone images almost exactly. With this corroboration, Linda organized a second independent search. In June 2016, volunteers gathered. 20 people equipped with handheld GPS units and metal detectors. They divided the scrub into squares. For 2 days, they combed through dry soil, photographing anomalies. On the afternoon of June 12th, a volunteer's detector signaled near the edge of the burned patch. Digging shallowly, they uncovered a charred metal buckle, warped from heat. It was bagged, labeled, and later identified as consistent with a child's backpack strap. The find shifted the search into darker territory. DNA testing was inconclusive, degraded by fire, but the object's presence confirmed human connection. Linda contacted the newspaper again. This time, the story reached beyond Dubbo. "Burned evidence found in Parker's search," the headline read. Images of the scorched buckle circulated online. Public pressure increased. Reluctantly, police reopened the case. They sent a forensic team to re-examine the site. Soil was retested, yielding the same result: accelerant trace. Additional digging revealed bone fragments mixed with ash. Analysis identified them as human, though partial and severely damaged. Chain of custody forms logged the fragments on June 18, 2016. DNA comparison confirmed one belonged to Anna Parker. The discovery ruptured 2 years of silence. The Parker case, once classified as voluntary absence, now shifted to homicide inquiry. Linda received the news at her kitchen table, the same place she had first underlined words in police reports. She stared at the DNA confirmation sheet, her hands shaking. Forensic text offered no comfort, only cold closure. Specimen matches maternal DNA of Anna Parker. Probability 99.9%. She pinned the lab report beneath the roadmap. A new line of red string crossed the board. The silence had been broken by persistence, by refusal to accept official dismissal. But the board was not finished. The pickup remained untraced. The fiber had no match. The boot print remained unexplained. Linda marked a new circle on the map. Beside it, she wrote, "If Anna is here, where are the children?" Soil tested positive for petroleum residue. The burned clearing forced investigators into reluctant action. Excavation teams returned in July 2016, this time with ground-penetrating radar. Rectangular grids were marked in spray paint, each scanned systematically. The radar revealed irregular voids beneath the soil, anomalies suggesting disturbed ground. Digging commenced with shovels, then with finer tools. On July 19th, skeletal remains were located 30 centimeters below the surface. The bones were fragmentary, but analysis confirmed they belonged to a juvenile. DNA tests later identified them as Lucas Parker. Weeks later, additional remains were recovered nearby, belonging to Sarah. Chain of custody records multiplied. Each bag of bone was logged, labeled, sealed. Photographs documented soil layers, angles of excavation, precise GPS coordinates. The discovery electrified media. Headlines across New South Wales carried the story: "Parker family remains found in Dubbo scrub." Forensic teams described fire damage, accelerant traces, and deliberate burial. For Linda Parker, confirmation came as both proof and devastation. She read the DNA reports line by line, her finger tracing the probability figures. Each report was clinical, detached. Specimen A consistent with Lucas Parker, probability 99.9%. Specimen B consistent with Sarah Parker, probability 99.9%. She pinned the documents beneath the torn roadmap, red string binding them in parallel. Her board now bore a cross of paper and thread, every line converging on the center. Public pressure mounted. The police commissioner announced the case was officially reclassified as homicide. Task Force D1417 was created, staffed with detectives from Sydney. Press conferences promised transparency, accountability, but within Linda's ledger, she noted the shift with precision. Reopened only after family discovered remains. In August, detectives re-interviewed residents. One recalled hearing shouting near the bridge the night of January 24, 2014. The statement, buried in earlier logs, had never been followed up. The black pickup returned as a central question. Tire impression searches in the archive revealed nothing. Yet Linda insisted it was the missing piece. She marked it on her board with a crude drawing, pinned next to the road map. By September, coronial inquests were underway. Pathologists testified that fire had been set deliberately, accelerants poured to obscure remains. Forensic chemists displayed chromatograms, peaks of hydrocarbon signatures. The courtroom heard the words, "deliberate concealment." Linda sat in the gallery, her binder on her lap. She listened as experts explained what the state had ignored for 2 years. The torn roadmap, entered as Exhibit 14, was displayed in court. Its corner still missing, its folds darkened by fingerprint dust. Jurors studied it under the lights. Closure came at a cost. Each confirmation of identity was another confirmation of loss. The chain of custody form carried 4 identical signatures. The reopening of the Parker investigation altered the landscape of Dubbo. Media vans parked outside the courthouse. Reporters combed through transcripts, publishing timelines of what the family had already known for years. The official narrative, once voluntary absence, was now dismantled in public view. Detectives built their case from fragments. They returned to the night of January 24, 2014, reconstructing hours between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. Witness statements were re-examined. One transcript stood out. A farmer reported faint screaming near the bridge after 10 p.m. His note, logged but never pursued, was unearthed in the archives. The sound was described as short, high-pitched, like a child. Linda copied the transcript and added it to her board. She drew a red line from the bridge circle to the boot print photo, another to the burned clearing. The pattern spread like veins, converging back on the torn road map. Detectives interviewed truck drivers who had crossed the Macquarie River Bridge that night. Several remembered a vehicle with its hazard lights flashing. One recalled seeing 2 figures standing by the Commodore. Descriptions were vague, height uncertain, clothing indistinct, but both adults. Investigators began cross-checking vehicle registrations for black pickups active in the region during January 2014. Records revealed 23 such vehicles. One, registered to a man named Alan Greaves, had repair logs showing bodywork to the left fender in February 2014. The garage invoice documented repainting and replacement of a headlamp. The paper trail entered evidence under Repair Documentation, Exhibit 21. Paint samples from the Commodore's door, collected belatedly, were compared. The forensic lab issued its report. Paint flake from Holden Commodore consistent with sample from black pickup, probability match 99%. Linda received a copy of the report. She underlined the figure, pinned it beside the road map, and wrote beneath it in red, "Contact confirmed." Despite the breakthrough, resistance persisted. Defense attorneys argued contamination, coincidence, misinterpretation of forensic evidence. But Linda knew the anomalies had begun aligning. At night, she sat before her board, the wall now crowded with maps, fibers, reports, photographs. She listened again to the transcript of the scream at 10:03 p.m. The time aligned with her own reconstruction. She whispered the words as if they were coordinates. 10:03 p.m., near the bridge. The inquest pressed forward. Witnesses testified. Forensic scientists displayed graphs, images, tables. Yet for Linda, it was not abstraction. It was the scream. The burned ground, the torn map, still at the center of everything. A scream marked at 10:03 p.m. aligned with the map. October 2016. The task force shifted its focus from fragments to confrontation. Detectives subpoenaed garage records tied to Alan Greaves, owner of the black pickup. His repair invoice, dated February 11, 2014, documented repainting of the left fender and replacement of a cracked headlamp. The note, "Impact damage," was written in the mechanic's handwriting. Forensic teams retrieved the Commodore from storage once more. Technicians scraped layers of paint from the driver's side door. Microscopic comparison revealed a near-identical composition to the samples logged from Greaves's truck. The lab's report used unambiguous phrasing. Consistency exceeds 99% probability. Greaves was interviewed at his home. He admitted to bodywork, but claimed it was the result of striking a kangaroo. He denied being near the bridge. His alibi, that he was repairing fences on his property, was contradicted by cell site records. Phone data placed him within 2 kilometers of the Macquarie River Bridge between 9:50 and 10:20 p.m. Detectives presented the contradictions in interrogation. Greaves grew defensive. "I wasn't anywhere near that family. You're twisting this." But the documents spoke louder than words. Repair invoices, cell site logs, and forensic paint comparison. Linda followed developments through her lawyer, who forwarded copies of each report. She pinned the garage invoice beneath the roadmap, string linking it to the fiber sample and the burned clearing. Her board now resembled a lattice of evidence, each piece tied to the next. In December, prosecutors confirmed intention to pursue charges. The black pickup was impounded, examined in forensic bays. Traces of fabric fibers were recovered from its interior. Preliminary comparison suggested similarity to the strand found in the Commodore. A full match was pending. Media seized on the detail. Headlines read, "Pickup tied to Parker car." Families of Dubbo gathered outside the courthouse, demanding accountability for the years of inaction. The weight of evidence shifted decisively. For 2 years, the official narrative had been voluntary absence. Now the evidence, fiber, paint, DNA, cell site data, formed a chain. Linda updated her board nightly, almost ritualistically. She stood before it in silence, hands clasped, as if the torn roadmap could answer back. For her, it was no longer simply about closure, it was exposure, forcing the record to admit what it had once denied. The paint flake matched sample B with 99% certainty. The trial of Alan Greaves opened in February 2017 at the New South Wales Supreme Court. The courtroom was sterile, oak benches polished, fluorescent light humming overhead. A glass case displayed physical exhibits, the torn roadmap, the fiber tube, the scorched buckle, the paint samples. Each was tagged with black-on-white labels. Prosecutors began with the timeline. They showed fuel receipts at 2:15 p.m., tow logs at 7:15 p.m., and cell site records placing Greaves near the bridge at 10:03 p.m. A sequence of official documents, each stamped, each date marked, each closing the gap left by police years earlier. Forensic witnesses testified in measured tones. A fiber analyst described the polyester cotton blend, noting its presence in both the Commodore and Greaves's pickup. A paint specialist projected microscopic slides, demonstrating the identical chemical composition. The drone operator who found the burned patch showed video footage, time-stamped, annotated with coordinates. Defense attorneys countered. They argued contamination, faulty chain of custody, bias introduced by private testing. They suggested the family could have encountered danger elsewhere, beyond Greaves's reach. They questioned why no eyewitness placed him directly at the scene, but the accumulation of documents and fragments weighed heavy. The jury studied chromatograms, ultraviolet scans, invoices. Each piece was mundane alone. Together, they built a lattice of intrusion and concealment. Linda Parker sat in the front row every day. Her binder rested on her lap, filled with the same reports now displayed as evidence. She had read them countless times at her kitchen table. Now they were voiced in court, her private investigation rendered public. On the third week, the prosecution displayed Exhibit 14, the roadmap. Its folds were stiff, dusted black from fingerprint powder. The torn corner remained missing. The judge instructed the jury to examine it closely. Each juror passed the plastic sleeve along the row. The object was ordinary, yet it bore the full weight of absence. Linda watched them study it, her eyes fixed on the creases she had memorized years before. To her, the map was no longer paper. It was testimony. Court transcripts later captured the moment. Exhibit 14 admitted. Roadmap recovered from passenger seat, Commodore. Significance. Last object handled before disappearance. The trial stretched over 6 weeks. Each day added another layer. Chain of custody forms, garage invoices, accelerant chromatograms. On March 30th, the jury retired to deliberate. The judge initialed the exhibit with a heavy black pen. The jury returned after 2 days. Guilty on all counts: homicide, concealment, destruction of evidence. Alan Greaves stood expressionless as the verdict was read. The sentence followed in April. Life imprisonment without parole. The courtroom heard the judgment in the same clinical language that had defined the case. Deliberate act of violence, calculated concealment, aggravated by attempted destruction through accelerant. No mention of names beyond procedural necessity. Only numbers, statutes, terms. For Linda Parker, the words landed with both weight and vacancy. She sat in the front row, her binder closed for the first time in 3 years. Pages of logs, letters, and reports had carried her to this moment. But closure was not the sensation she felt. It was stillness, a silence that no judgment could resolve. After the sentencing, exhibits were returned. On May 12th, she signed a release form for items belonging to her brother's family. The stuffed koala and plastic dinosaur, tagged and sealed since 2014, were handed back in clear bags. The cooler box was gone, destroyed years earlier. The roadmap, however, was offered in a frame, preserved under glass. Court staff explained it had become central evidence and could not be returned casually. Instead, they allowed her to keep a certified copy, the original archived permanently. She accepted the copy. She brought it home and hung it in her living room, above the mantel. The torn corner remained missing. Visitors saw it as an artifact. To Linda, it was a reminder of the years lost to denial, of the work forced onto a family when institutions turned away. She kept the binder nearby. Within it, the FOIA denials, the private lab reports, the soil analysis results, the witness transcripts, all aligned around that single object. In interviews, Linda refused to describe her work as obsession. She called it duty. If we hadn't pushed, the case would have stayed closed. The official narrative had collapsed. What began as voluntary absence had ended in conviction. The cost was years of unanswered birthdays, years of silence that should never have been endured. The roadmap remained above her mantel. Its creases were permanent, its torn edge unrepairable. An ordinary object transformed into the single echo of an extraordinary crime. The torn map edge remained unrepairable, permanent.